Development. Special meeting will now come to order. I apologize to everyone for being late. I chair another committee, a standing committee that ran late down the hall. So with that, we'll begin with item number 1.
Item number 1 is Resolution Cardenas, Parks, Reyes, and Chief Legislative Analyst Report relative to the city's position on AB 750 that would create a deferred entry of judgment program for first-time nonviolent drug offenders. This item was also referred to Rules and Government Committee.
Okay. Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. John Deering with the CLA's office. Before you is a CLA report recommending council adoption of your resolution for the city to formally support AB 750, which would authorize the development and implementation of a deferred entry of judgment program that provides specified components of such a program that is modeled after a program that has been implemented by the San Francisco District Attorney's Office. Your resolution states that current law provides reentry programs in prison and parole systems, but that there's inadequate guidance for these programs to be developed at the local level. This bill does that. Deferred entry of judgment programs for certain low-level drug-related crimes that are also nonviolent provide alternative forms of sentencing and enable the particular individual to receive drug counseling, additional education, basically a second chance at being able to understand and re-immerse into their community. So because this is consistent with the city's prior efforts to support similar legislation, CLA recommends that the city formally adopt this resolution to support.
Excellent. As part of this CLA's analysis, is there any semblance of conclusion that this would be actually something that would, in the long run, save the city money?
I think globally, it very well could. If you're talking about, if you base it off of the costs of, what it costs to do such programs, San Francisco has indicated it only costs $5,000 a year.
Well, I'm going beyond that. The program costs, I think we can, I will assume that the program costs are very small compared to when you look at suppression costs and all these other related factors when you deal with issues after the fact, especially when you look at the recidivism improvements. If you're talking about people who are first-time offenders, you're talking about people who are committing low-level crimes, and if they're able to address the root causes of those activities, and you have a recidivism rate, such as in San Francisco, my understanding it was maybe 10% or something like that?
That's the statistic that they say, yes, under 10%, whereas the same criteria, the same circumstances for those is well over 50%. And above and beyond that, there's the, widely acknowledged statistic that...
so that sounds like a 5-to-1 improvement.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that being the case, when you look at booking individuals, trying them, and then all of a sudden there's no question that eventually they will, even if they don't commit higher level crimes, the fact that it's their second offense, they may end up doing longer periods of time or having much more severe punishment. And therefore, anytime you do that, if you're increasing the term of punishment, if you're increasing the activities, you're increasing the visits to court, et cetera, there's no question that those are a tremendous cost. Be it county, city, somebody's paying for that, and that's the taxpayer. So when it comes to the taxpayer, this kind of program, is there a net effect overall of a reduction to the taxpayer?
I think you could assume that, without being able to get into it quantitatively, less crime occurring if these people are able to re-immerse themselves in a way that enables them to stay out of trouble and commit less crimes on the street. That's less of a workload on police and the prosecuting attorneys, et cetera. I think absolutely that would translate into cost savings one way or another.
So is there any evidence that this kind of deferred entry of judgment program for first-time nonviolent drug offenders works?
Without being entirely familiar on these programs. Pardon me?
Did San Francisco track any of the results?
As far as cost savings?
No, just as far as numbers.
I mean, numbers and crimes, I would presume they do. I don't have those available.
Is anybody here who can shed some light on that? Please come forward. There are 2 chairs. You come forward. You share the microphone.
That's a raw deal of a chair.
Hi, I'm with Assembly Speaker Karen Bass's office, and she is the author of AB 750.
Thank you for coming today.
Sure, thank you for having me. So in reference to your last question, yes, they have tracked, again, these 100 participants, and they found that not only did only 10% of those participants reoffend compared to 53% of the population, the control population, but also over 90% of those graduates are employed currently, over 90%, and over 70% are holding down a job and going to school. So those are outstanding statistics, if that's what you were interested in. And I have lots more information, but you've covered a lot of it already.
That's the kind of stuff that make any parent happy.
Yeah.
Holding down a job
And going to school.
Holy smokes.
That's 70%.
Wow. That's
And 90% are in school. Are working.
So my recommendation to our staff, be it the CAO, CLA, or what have you, anytime you're analyzing legislation, federal, state, or what have you, and we're contemplating a resolution like this, you really need to go to the source and, such as the author, and find out from them where they're coming from, what kind of information they have, and that way you could answer some of these questions a little bit more directly. Obviously, your analysis is correct. The spirit of this, just looking at it, it's a no-brainer. This makes sense. If we're talking about reducing crime, if we're talking about reducing the need to pour more resources into crime prevention, intervention, suppression, et cetera, this is something that you're recommending that we support as a legislative body, which is what you said. But at the same time, please understand that many of the resources that that you're going to probably garner anyway are sitting there right at your fingertips with one phone call. On top of that, I also want to let you know that in addition to that, you're always going to want to do your due diligence and make sure that you go ahead, if there's a third-party source, go ahead and call them as well. For example, there was a situation here in the city of Los Angeles where, again, what seemed like a no-brainer, we were getting recommendations from the CLA, CAO that we should go ahead and move forward with reducing the use of polystyrene products such as in the city of Los Angeles with our own purchase dollars of polystyrene products, which is the one product that we are all familiar with is like the popcorn that they call it popcorn, that they fill the boxes so that items don't get damaged when you're shipping them. In addition to that, polystyrene cups, which is the ugly, unsightly looking white styrofoam cup. And we were recommending to do that, but we were basing it off of the wonderful, progressive, incredible city of Santa Monica that banned them in their restaurants, polystyrene products in their restaurants. And nobody bothered to go ask the city of Santa Monica what were their results. Luckily, in this case, we have some results. They tracked 100 people in San Francisco when it comes to this DEJ project. Well, nobody bothered to ask. So I told the staff in the Department of Sanitation, why don't you go ask the city of San Francisco, the city of Santa Monica, what their results are. And if they have results, get it in writing. Have them show you their reports. And all they got was verbal answers saying it's working. And then when they dug further and they said, well, how do you know it's working? They said, it just does. It just is. And we were taking it as gospel that because it's the city of Santa Monica, come on, they're very progressive, especially when it comes to environmental issues. But they had no results. They didn't track it. And then when some of our staff went and talked to some of the restaurant owners, some of them were, looking over their shoulders saying, well, nobody from the city of Santa Monica's here to hear what I have to say. But they said it's not working. And then some restaurants said, guess what we do? We don't allow people to take their food home. If they do, they better bring their own container. Santa Monica, the city of Santa Monica was not reporting that to us. They were not letting us know, well, it's working out a little quirky. Some restaurants aren't letting people take their food home in their containers, have to bring their own. They didn't say that. Why didn't they say that? Because they didn't know. But this is a perfect example where the city of San Francisco is a great resource, and also the author of this legislation, who happens to be the Speaker of the State Assembly, happens to have quite a bit of resources, right? A little bit more than the average member? Yeah, a little bit more. I think so. So I just wanted to remind you of those tools that are at your disposal on these kinds of analysis, because I was hoping you might be able to give me a little bit more details. Everything you told me was true. I'm glad you weren't trying to wing it and tell me something that sounded logical but you hadn't verified it. So thank you for being truthful and not, just trying to tell me what I want to hear. But you're right, your analysis is correct. On the surface of it, great, but a little bit more details next time. Thank you. Well, then I'll ask you this question. When it comes to the offenders' histories of gang involvement, and are they eligible for these services?
In the Back on Track program, they are not.
Okay.
So
this legislation, how does it address
no,
that?
this legislation basically would change the penal code and allow us to, if we chose, to create a similar program to do so. But there are no specifications as to what we would want to do. We would just choose to
So
take.
it's left up to the local jurisdiction?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So
And
it's up to that DA,
That's
that judge, in order to determine.
who would be eligible,
Okay.
and what services the offenders would be able to access.
So that's a local issue.
Right. We would
Okay, what
carve out our
services
own
are
program.
available, and then what they can negotiate between the DA and basically the judge as to which cases
Precisely.
are going to be utilizing this program.
Precisely. And just to quickly mention that it has passed the Assembly. It's currently in the Senate. In the Policy Committee, we are hoping and assuming that it will pass. By mid-September, it needs to be on the governor's desk. So, if folks are interested in calling your senators, it would be a good time to do so.
I know a few,
I know you do.
and I'll call them. Is there another program in the nation that has a similar?
I did not conduct my research on that. I do not know.
Okay.
But I can find out.
This is particular to California.
I would need to
This
find out.
legislation. No, I mean this legislation.
yes, it is.
Just for the record, for people listening.
Yes.
This legislation, Karen Bass is the Speaker of the State Assembly. This
Yes.
is state legislation.
Correct.
It would not affect what other states
No.
do or national, et cetera. So
Simply
this is
California.
the state of California.
That's right.
So the best example we're aware of is the one in San Francisco.
That's correct.
Okay, all right. Is there anything in the bill or that can be put in the bill to, and I'm trying to be careful because I know if you require it, then you got to provide money, and it's kind of a tough time to do that.
Yes.
But if anybody could provide money, it's the Speaker. When it comes to tracking, San Francisco, you gave me the example where they tracked 100 people who went through this program. Is there anything or any way that you could provide language in here that would provide some semblance of
Conduct research.
resource or something so that they could track it?
So they could, yeah.
'Cause that's
I
been
think
one
that
of
would
the
be
biggest
important
problems.
to-
See, when you come to intervention, prevention, and programs like this,
Yeah.
when things get tight or people get tired of hearing, they throw out the thing, well, show me proof.
Right.
But when it comes to funding law enforcement, for example, we don't ask them the same question. I do, but most policymakers don't ask that question. Show me proof.
Yeah.
Why should we authorize 50 more people for this gang task force or something into the PD or the sheriff's department or what have you? Why should we do that? Show me proof. Show me how it's going to work. We tend to just, say, well, they're the police department. They mean well. They're good at suppression. So why don't we just fund them? When it comes to stuff like this, unfortunately, even if this passes and people start to implement it, it's not enough for us to just walk around saying, hey, it works. We really need to document. We really need to be able to track it. We really need to be able to show that it's working. And would be even one step further, start to track the residual cost savings as well. Less shootings, less
Right.
people in the hospital.
Right.
Hospital saves money. especially in tough neighborhoods. You know, patching people up and patching bullet holes is very expensive, especially when they're not getting reimbursed, right?
I think that's an excellent recommendation, and you being able to track results and outcomes, I think, is essential, and I will make that recommendation to my boss and see if they can tweak the legislation somehow. I think that's essential. I don't know if it was mentioned that the cost of for each prisoner is 43. They estimated it to be 43,000 per year compared to 5,000, as you did say, for this program. So there is a cost savings, but so there I do imagine that they built in a research component.
And is this this would apply to offenders that are adult and children, or?
Yes.
Okay. Well, don't forget
First-time offenders.
First-time offenders, but don't forget this figure. Adults are costing us about $43,000 a year per person to incarcerate for 12 months. Juveniles in the state of California are estimated over 252,000.
Wow.
And that's a figure that came out of the state legislative analyst in Sacramento. When I was the budget chairman, we were guesstimating at that time. We hadn't fine-tuned it. We were guesstimating about 100,000-ish. And then a couple years later, we were guesstimating about 150,000. It seems like the figure is much more solidified today at about $250,000. It's 252,000 officially, the last figure I've heard. So that's a lot of savings. You can get a first-time offender to stop being a second or third or fourth-time offender, and then they avoid having to be in prison. Even if they're only in prison for 6 months.
Right.
What's half of 252,000? That's a lot of money. It's a lot more than we spend per child for K through 12. It's a lot more money than we spend for the most involved intervention program. The most involved intervention program that I'm aware of came out of Orange County, which was part of the 8% project that they did about 10 years ago. And that program back then was about $20,000+, where they involved services to the entire family. They had somebody handling a case manager to go visit with the family in their home, to do counseling with the parents and the children and the siblings, the offender, everybody. And that was still in the low 20,000 range. The average intervention prevention program in the state of California is still about $1,300 a year. So it makes sense.
Well, we certainly appreciate your support.
Thank you. Do you get the feeling I support this?
I do.
All right. Good. You're very perceptive. Okay. Is there anybody here to speak on item number 1? Item number 1. Yeah? Yep. Yeah, you can come forward and then fill out a card before you leave the room. If you don't, we will track you down. It'll be your first offense. Just kidding. You're new to this committee?
Is there a time limit that's recommended?
Yeah, it's 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
There's probably a clock within your view.
Okay, we'll fill that out in a moment. Okay.
While she's talking, you can fill it out. And go ahead. Your name for the record?
Hi, my name is Megan Ralston. I'm really pleased to be here today. I'm with Drug Policy Alliance in the Los Angeles office. This is the first time I've come to give public comment at a city council meeting, so I'm very excited. I'm here today to give our very strong support for AB 750. A lot of great points have already been mentioned, so I won't go over those again, but I will mention a couple of points that have not come out yet. Of course, current policy allows some nonviolent drug offenders to be diverted through programs designed to reduce recidivism and help them mainstream back into society, but we still have 30,000 nonviolent drug offenders behind bars at a cost, we quote, of $49,000 a year per the March 19th LAO report. In any event, it's still a lot of people behind bars at a great cost to all of us. So we certainly support this policy that would change that and make it more possible for more people to have better access to better programming that helps them throughout the duration of their life. I'm sure one of the things that you're all really well aware of is that once you have a drug conviction, that haunts you for the rest of your life. That makes it almost impossible for people to provide for their children, to gain good employment, to pursue future opportunities. So Drug Policy Alliance, and certainly just myself personally, fully support AB 750 because it truly gives people a second chance to provide for their children, stay in their communities, and advance their opportunities in the future. We encourage your support of this as well. Thank you.
Are you familiar with the opportunities that people tend to get for when they have drug addiction issues when they're actually incarcerated? Do they tend to get more services when they go to a program outside of incarceration, or do they tend to get more of those kinds of services addressing the drug addiction while incarcerated?
They get virtually no access to services while they're incarcerated. We certainly don't offer any kind of state-of-the-art drug treatment to people who are incarcerated. We certainly offer little, if any, vocational training, educational opportunities. So these kind of programs that are designed to prevent recidivism and give people a second chance by delaying entry of judgment are critical and essential. We don't offer them anywhere else. We don't offer them to people once they are incarcerated. So we have to have programs like this to prevent further problems for those individuals in the future.
Thank you. That's consistent with everybody who's come before this committee has reported. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sandra Phillips, and I'm a policy intern at the Drug Policy Alliance, and I also completely support AB 750, along with what Megan said. I'm a current law student, so I just finished, going through some criminal procedure classes, and 99% of the time I agree with what we're doing. However, in this case, I feel that if we support AB 750, that we'll be getting even more right. I don't think that nonviolent drug offenders should be stigmatized, for the rest of their life by having a criminal record, and it makes it so difficult to gain employment, support their family, and contribute to the community. So I know it's going along with what everything was said, but I feel really strongly about this, and that's why I really just came to support the meeting.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
Where are you going to school?
Chapman Law.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You could turn the cards in to the clerk. Thank you. Okay, so is there anybody else here for public comment on item number 1? Please come forward. Will you fill out a card? Yes. To the clerk. State your name for the record.
My name is Walter L. Taylor Jr., and I'm with Walden House. We are a behavioral health agency that's based out of San Francisco and Los Angeles, and we provide substance abuse treatment to current inmates and parolees coming out of the CDCR prison system. One comment I'd like to make is that we are very concerned about the recidivism rate, the lack of funding, and the proposed budget cuts that are proposed by Governor Schwarzenegger. And what we do want to say is that this particular bill seems to be very, very beneficial to cutting costs in regards to recidivism. We work with prisoners within the CDCR system in the in-prison substance abuse treatment programs. We work with them when they come out. In fact, we coordinate their substance abuse treatment from the time they're in the prison programs until hopefully fruition of them discharging parole in many cases. One of the things that is so impactful is what the lady said earlier, which is that once they have been adjudicated and that conviction weighs over their lives very, very greatly. And I think it is important to try and avert those kinds of judgments so that these people can have an opportunity to be productive and become taxpayers. There are plenty of folks in prison, and at $43,000 to $49,000 a year, we're wasting a lot of money.
Okay.
So we are very much in favor of this.
Did you say your organization is in San Francisco and in Los Angeles?
Yes, we were founded in 1969 in San Francisco, and we are currently throughout the state of California, and very heavily involved in drug treatment and behavioral health.
Your counterparts in San Francisco with your organization, are they familiar with the program that was in San Francisco?
I believe so, yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all the wonderful work you do. Okay, is there anybody else who hasn't turned in a card who'd like to speak on item number 1? Okay, seeing and hearing no one come forward, public comment on item number 1 is now closed. And with that, we're more than happy to move this item forward, and it's a recommendation of the chair of this committee to adopt the resolution. Thank you. We now move to item number 2.
Item number 2 is the communication from the mayor and city administrative officer relative to the grant extension of gang reduction program and Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Child Protection Division continuation program grants.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Camilla Fong from the Office of the CAO. The item before you relates to the request from the Mayor's Office for approval on the proposed extensions and modifications for 2 related U.S. Department of Justice grants. To the 2003 Gang Reduction Program grant in the amount of $2.5 million and the 2006 Child Protection Division Continuation Program grant in the amount of $100,000. For the Gang Reduction Program grant, the current contract term expires on June 30th, 2009. In order to extend the grant term for 1 year and expend the remaining balance of the grant award, the Mayor's Office requested and received a no-cost extension from the grantor. The revised grant period, including this extension, is effective from October 1st, 2003 through June 30th, 2010. For the Child Protection Grant, the original grant term was October 1st, 2006 through September 30th, 2007. The prevention services contractor, the Story Project, was unable to fulfill its obligations and requested termination of the contract on September 6, 2007. Subsequently, the Mayor's Office requested and received approval from the grantor to reallocate the funds for gang prevention services within the GRP provider network with a new extended grant term of October 1st, 2006 through September 30th, 2009. At this time, the Mayor's Office is also requesting various modifications associated with the continued implementation of both grants. The grantor has approved all the requested modifications, and these modifications are described in more detail in this report.
Okay. You mentioned the Story Project, that the contract with them was terminated on September 6, 2007. Since then, who's been providing prevention services in that area, and what kind of services are being provided, and when did they start?
I believe someone from the Mayor's Office is here.
Thanks, Cami. Hello, Mildred Lopez, Mayor's Office, Gang Reduction and Youth Development. So this $100,000 grant was in addition to the $2.5 million original Gang Reduction Program grant. We were instructed to contract directly with the Story Project, so we went to council to request a sole source contract, and early on they were having some difficulty with outreach and recruitment, and just organizationally they were having difficulty with their executive director.
Were they organic to that area, or they decided to take their services to that area?
They had a program at Stevenson Middle School prior to that, and so this was actually a partnership between the executive director of the Story Project and OJJDP. So we weren't involved in the coordination of this grant, but they said that you know, in order for them to be able to provide services in this particular community, that they would have to go through the mayor's office to receive this funding, and that's how the partnership grew.
And when was that?
I'm sorry?
When was that?
That was back in '07, early, like spring of '07.
Okay.
That was around spring of
The Story
07.
Project got terminated or their contract got terminated in September of '07.
Yes, their executive director left during the summer, and then they decided that, the board decided to dismantle the organization.
So who's been providing those services that used to be provided by the Story Project?
Big brothers, big sisters, and families and schools came in. So they were they went through our RFP process, and they were our existing prevention provider. So we were hoping that we could just augment their contract, and then they could just expand services to that community. So they were already in the community since '06.
Okay. So they started taking on those responsibilities.
That's correct.
Okay. How long after September 6th was that formalized?
It was.
Weeks, months?
It was months. There was a transition period from my leaving the position at Boyle Heights, because if you recall, we launched GRID in July of '07, so there was a transition phase, and so it took some time to get that formalized, and that's why we're here today, to sort of, to formalize the contract with those two organizations and reimburse them for services that were rendered back then.
Okay. So when it comes to the Nurse Family Partnership Program, apparently they're developing a primary data collection instrument to identify high-risk gang-involved clients. Is that any different than the mayor's office's Youth Services Eligibility Tool, otherwise known as YSIT?
Yes, this is actually a component of OJJDP's comprehensive model that wasn't picked up by the GRID office. It's primary prevention. So with the OJJDP model, there's primary prevention, secondary prevention, and intervention and reentry. So all GRID is working on is the prevention component according to the OJJDP model, which is working with high-risk youth ages to 10 to 15.
Which does not include primary prevention.
Not according to the OJJDP model. The OJJDP model was supposed to include prenatal and infancy support. So early on, we found out during the assessment process in Boyle Heights that we had an existing prenatal and infancy support program here in the county of Los Angeles. And so when we issued our RFP for GRP, we invited agencies to submit proposals to provide those direct services. And NFPP, which is the Nurse Family Partnership Program, did that. They primarily serve young teen moms. They're young teen moms that were living in the GRID zone, but that were currently being served as part of the program. So either they were gang involved or their boyfriend or baby's father or husband was gang involved. And so that's who they were hired to work with. So they work closely with the case manager at Homeboy Industries. So either...
That's primary prevention?
That's primary prevention. It's prenatal and infancy support. So a registered nurse provides services to the young teen mom and their baby the first 2 years. So they're enrolled into the program during their second or third trimester, and then they follow them and provide services to the mom and to the child the first 2 years of the child's life. It's in the county. It's actually, it has been researched, and it's effective in reducing future risk behaviors with the mom and the child. So that's prenatal and infancy support according to the OJJDP model.
Why don't they just call it prenatal prevention?
I don't know. I guess it would be. I don't know.
Everything you described, the tie-in is the pregnancy. That's the tie-in.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, and the whole concept is providing wraparound services for, it's not only the ex-gang member that needs a job and needs counseling, it's the entire family unit that requires services. So that's essentially what we try to address within GRP, at GRP.
But what makes it primary is the pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Learn something new every day. All right. When it comes to the teen court program at Roosevelt High School, you're requesting to withdraw from the negotiations and the execution of a memorandum of understanding with the LA Unified School District.
Yes. So what we did was early on, when GRP started, we decided to start a teen court program at Roosevelt High School. And I'm sure you're familiar with these teen courts. They're happening at Dorsey and Wilson, through the Superior Court and Judge Wesley's office. So it's purely voluntary. So it's been in operation since May of '05, I think. Is that what it is? Yeah, in May of '05. And we have a dedicated probation officer, a Superior Court judge that volunteers this time once a month to hear juvenile probation cases. These are first-time offender cases, and
the students act like the jury?
Exactly. So what we did was we dedicated some funding to support the build-out of a classroom and to convert it into a teen court, similar to Wilson and Dorsey High School. But we hit some bumps in the road because Roosevelt High School couldn't afford to give up a classroom to build out a teen court, unfortunately. So we had
space for a bungalow.
They didn't have anything. They didn't want to give. The current principal, Principal Quemada, said we just can't do it right now. So what we decided was that we were going to
What's the principal's name?
Principal Quemada.
What does that mean in English?
Burnt.
Curious. Well,
So
wait, slow down. Isn't Roosevelt High School one of the targeted high schools when it comes to the synergy between the school district and the mayor, et cetera?
yes.
Well, how is it that a principal is not willing to work with us on?
Well,
program like
that was the principal back when I was the program manager in Boyle Heights, and
607?
yeah, yes. And so the transition took place. So the PLOS took over, the Partnership Los Angeles Schools took over. We started negotiations again, and still they couldn't accommodate the build out of a classroom into a courtroom. And we have the funding for it. We have about $40,000, and
That's about what it takes to get a bungalow.
no, it wasn't it's not a bungalow. It's a build out. So it's an actual classroom. It's about half this size.
Yeah,
And
but what I'm saying is I happen to know that these bungalows, when a school has space to go get a bungalow and create a new classroom.
Oh, I see.
You know what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying.
That's about the same cost. So even if they don't have a building that they could actually, take the books out of there or stop using it as a classroom or an office or what have you, even if they don't have that, coincidentally, $40,000 is what it takes to get a bungalow added to a campus. You get what I'm saying? So,
Right.
So is Roosevelt, I don't know Roosevelt that well. I know San Fernando High School, which is one of the bigger high schools in the district, and Garfield at one time, for a long time, was the largest populated high school in the district or in California. But so the bottom line is, they seem to be concluding that they don't even have the space.
Right. So what we negotiated with the current principal and PLOS and all the partners involved, Superior Court was involved, LAUSD's Innovation Division, was that we were going to purchase portable equipment. So they have what's called the penthouse at Roosevelt, which is the top floor, which is used for trainings, and they have tables, and they've been using that floor to conduct their teen court sessions once a month. And
How
so
long has that been going on?
since May of '05,
Okay,
for more than 2 years
but
now.
it's still temporary.
Right. And so now we're asking, okay, now that everyone's agreed that we're just going to move forward with purchasing the portable furniture, which the program is still running. It's just running on chairs and tables that have been provided by the school. But we want to formalize it, and what they want to do with the money is purchase the judge's stand and the jury section where they'll have chairs and and then 2 tables for the parent, because they interview the parent, so the parent needs to sit there. The probation officer, the judge's robe, the gavel, and so forth, the flag. So that's the last what was approved when we sat down with them.
But you're requesting to withdraw from negotiations?
Just from LAUSD. LAUSD decided to forego their amount. It was about 7,000 and some change.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Where's the press conference?
They had gotten some money from the Boys and Girls Club, so they said, put it towards the furniture. It's all going to be put to use for teen court. So they said, we're using some money from Boys and Girls Clubs. We're sending some kids to the teen court conference. We're buying T-shirts. We have transportation. Use that money towards the purchase of furniture. So it's still going back into the teen court program. They just decided to forego their amount, which is about 7,000. And then the 32,000 was originally for the Superior Court. So that's what was agreed upon with the group at the table.
Okay. So bottom line is they're withdrawing their formal $7,000 contribution. They're contributing in some fashion, but not formally with that $7,000.
Correct.
I didn't expect to spend so much time talking about it, but I'm just so amazed at the school district. They're unbelievable. All right. In addition to extending the grant period, the mayor's office is requesting authority to stop contracting or modify the scope of services of several contractors, including, as we talked about, the Story project, but also Big Brothers Big Sisters of Greater LA. What mechanisms do you have in place to ensure that community-based organizations meet their requirements and that you're providing the technical assistance needed to support these agencies?
Mm-hmm. So we've hired Miguel Leon to serve as the program manager for the Boyle Heights area. So he was the person that took over my position to ensure that contractual obligations were met. All of the contracts ended December 31st of this year. Mm-hmm. And then grid last year, sorry. And then grid prevention contracts kicked in January, if you recall. Which is what we wanted to do. We wanted to avoid an interruption of services. So those contracts have been closed out already. With this extension for Big Brothers Big Sisters and families in schools, we didn't wait to collect records from those two agencies. So as they were providing services, they were required to submit monthly reports. And the program manager worked closely with our Homeland Security and Public Safety with their accounting division to make sure that all invoices were paid out and support documentation was provided on a monthly basis because they received reimbursement on a monthly basis. So all of that documentation has already been collected.
Okay. Now, and rolling forward when it comes to the technical assistant and the support to the agencies?
It'll be Miguel Leon. Miguel Leon will continue in that position.
Coordinating that, make sure all the information gets in.
Yes.
Tracking and all that.
Yes, and he still will be working closely with Homeland Security and Public Safety's accounting unit.
Okay. All right. What's the status of the development and implementation of the web-based client tracking system, Integrated Services Information System? We all call it ISIS around here.
Yes. So, as you know, as a result of the controller's report, and if you recall, she strongly recommended in that report that we not move forward with ISIS as our web-based client tracking system for our new prevention provider. So, as a result of that, we're venturing into new areas in terms of developing a web-based case management system. We're moving from a client tracking system to a comprehensive case management system. And we met early on with the city and ITA, and we found out that unfortunately they couldn't meet our needs in terms of what we wanted to provide our prevention and intervention providers. So although we were able to extract some data from ISIS and incorporate it into our new system, we decided that we weren't going to proceed with ISIS for our prevention and intervention contractors. So the grant ended December 31st, so that's when August 31st actually was when it ended, when our contract ended. So the system is there. You know, we invested some money in the development of it, and our providers used it during the life of the GRP grant. But once the grant ended December 31st, information input ceased as well.
So how are we tracking now?
Now we are tracking, you know,
The old-fashioned way?
the old-fashioned way.
Calculators and binders and stuff like that?
Yes, just until we develop our web-based, our comprehensive web-based case management system, which we're looking to launch in July. So,
A month away.
yes, for our prevention component, we're still developing our intervention case management system. But we went out to bid, and with the advice of our city attorney, and we presented our case. There's an advisory committee, or ITA has a committee that you should know, you would know, that you have to present your case or your request to develop the system if you're not using, you know, the city's.
already have, yeah.
Exactly. And so CDD presented on behalf of, ITA presented, and the Computer Systems Division arm of CDD, which helped us develop ISIS, presented and said that it was not going to be doable within the time frame and within the amount that we wanted to pay for this creation of this new system. And so ITA heard our case, and they went ahead and approved a new software, the purchase of a new software. It's the Athena
Off-the-shelf type software. That what I mean by that is something that pretty much handles it with maybe some slight modifications.
Yes, it's called the Athena Software, and it's currently operational within some of our existing CBOs. And so I believe, you know what, I'm not the person overseeing this, so it's, from what I know, it's a company based
So
in Canada.
Going down a road where you anticipate being able to fulfill that tracking system now that ISIS is not going to be the tracking system.
Correct.
And you're still looking at July?
The last that was reported to us internally was July for prevention.
And I guess the idea is if it works for prevention, then you guys will just kind of extend it over to intervention?
Yes, we currently have beta sites operating, so there's 3 prevention sites that are currently testing out the system, and we've held focus groups with case managers citywide to determine, you know, how user-friendly it is, to ensure that we're collecting the correct components. And then also our evaluator, Urban Institute, is reviewing it as well. So because it's going to be important to extract the data for evaluation purposes, we need to make sure that it's user-friendly, that our evaluators are able to easily extract the data through regular data dumps. And so it's been a work in progress these last few months. So we want to make sure it's a good system for our providers, and it's not cumbersome, as was criticized of the ISIS system. It was cumbersome. It wasn't user friendly. The reports weren't really beneficial, and so forth. So we're trying to improve that system. And this one will be web based, similar to ISIS, and it'll have a calendar. It'll require that the case managers track the hours spent with the client. It'll track the progress of the client, so it'll include the Y-set, the original Y-set, and then, you know, subsequent screens, 6 months in 6-month increments after that.
Okay. All right. Well, creating new systems, getting people to use new systems is a bigger headache than you probably realize yet. Yeah. So be ready. It's not easy. All right. Is there anybody else here to speak on item number 2? We're on item number 2. Is anybody here for public comment on item number 2? Seeing and hearing no one come forward, I do not have any public comment cards for item number 2. Public comment on item number 2 is now closed. So with that, it'll be the recommendation of the chair of this committee to approve the CAO recommendations. and also recommend that the mayor's office report back on the expenditure plan for the remaining funds and final closeout of the GRP grant.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That
Thank you.
concludes item number 2, and those are the items on today's agenda. I'm sorry, item number 3.
Oh, no. Mr. Chair, items 3 and 4 were deleted from the original agenda. The correct revised agenda only has 2 items, and you've covered them.
Correct, yes, which brings me to my last point. I want to let everybody know there are a lot of committees of the council, ad hoc, standing committees, that are okay with not having reports in before the items are heard. When I chair a committee, it's very rare that I will hear an item before the reports that are due are in. And what I'm going to be asking people when I am bothered at the delays and the time it's taking to get reports in, I'm going to be asking people on the record when we finally agendize the item, why did this take so long? People can fall on the sword if they don't want to say the reason why it took so long, or they can just cough it up and say, this is the reason why it took so long. Okay? It needs to be understood. Those reports are important. It's part of the process. It helps us make informed decisions. So understand in the future, some of the items were taken off the agenda because the reports were not here on time. Please understand. Communicating with my office, letting us know that the reports are delayed, letting us know why will help us help you get things in order so we can all move forward. Okay? We're talking about rendering important services, life and death services that go through this committee. I think it's important that we do everything that we can to make sure that we are doing our job. And whether it's burning the midnight oil or working extra hours or what have you, I know my staff is salaried, so I don't have to worry about paying them overtime. Lucky me. We got to do what we got to do to get these things in order and so we can move in a timely manner. Okay? So, like I said, when reports take too long, I'm going to be asking people on the record, on the microphone, what took so long when we finally agendize that item. Okay? Thank you all very much. Is there anybody here for general public comment? General public comment to this committee? Anybody here for general public comment? Seeing and hearing none, this committee is now adjourned. Thank you.